Hello, and thank you so much for tuning in to Talking Sports with Evan. Back after week off last week, and I appreciate you all joining in, watching, listening, however you're observing Talking Sports with Evan, and lots, mostly Packer talk. 53-man roster for the Packers have come out. Practice squad has been named, and kind of want to give some initial thoughts on the Packer 53-man roster and the cut down date and my just some of my general thoughts and what the Packers are mostly looking for. So, Packers initial 53-man roster, as nobody is surprised, they kept two quarterbacks in Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love. Little bit of a surprise, they kept two running backs in Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, which I'll talk about a little bit in a second. Maybe part of that. They kept seven wide receivers: Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, Sammy Watkins, Kristen Watson, Romeo Dobbs, Amari Rogers, and Samari Torre. Four tight ends and Mercedes Lewis, Robert Tanyan, Josiah DeGara, and Tyler Davis, and 10 offensive linemen: Elton Jenkins, David Bakhtiari, Josh Myers, Royce Newman, John Runyon, Yash Nijman, Jake Hansen, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, and Rashid Walker. So, first thing, talk about the offense and what I think part of the thing with the Packers is with the offense and why they kept kind of positions that they did. So, first with running back, only keeping two running backs, and that's a big risk. And I know Amari Rogers put some snaps at running back in the preseason, in the last preseason game, out of the backfield on some jet sweep actions and whatnot. But I I think it's a bit of a risk. But the thing is, but the Packers can do, and I think they're probably going to, is Hill's on the pup. He's starting the season on the pup list. He has to miss the first four games of the season. Goodson and Taylor both got added to the practice squad. So what I'm thinking the Packers are probably going to do is they can call up to three times before they have to put somebody on the 53-man roster or release them. I think they're going to probably use Goodson and Taylor until Hill comes back and utilize um, the third running back that way. Offensive line wise, it kept 10. And I'm not really sure how that compares to past numbers, keeping 10 offensive linemen. But I think they kept 10 because you got guys who can play tackle. You got Elton Jenkins, David Bakhtiari, Royce Newman, Yash Nyman, Zach Tom, Rashid Walker. A lot of guys that can play tackle. I know Zach Tom can play inside or outside. Walker is strictly a tackle. Newman can play guard or tackle. But I think basically what they're doing is they're hoping Jenkins and Bakhtiari are ready for week one. They're hoping that Jenkins and Bakhtiari can start week one in Minnesota. But what they're doing is they're giving themselves kind of a security blanket in case neither of them are ready. You have other guys in Tom, Newman, Walker, Nijman that can play tackle. I think that's kind of what they're doing. Um, they hope to have them back. They're healthy enough not to be put, stay on the pup list. They're healthy enough not to put on the IR, which I don't think you could with either of them at this point anyway, since they've already on the IR with a knee injury. They would have had to stay on the pup. But I think you have to activate them, and you're hoping they're ready for week one, if not week one, week two, week three ish. I think they want to get through Minnesota and then hope that they're ready for the home opener against Chicago. I think that is what they're doing with the keeping the 10 offensive linemen, especially a few guys that can play tackle position. And Rashid Walker had a great couple preseason games, and he earned that roster spot with that. And he was the Packers' seventh round pick, and he's a guy that probably should have went second, third, or fourth round, but he fell to the seventh round for some reason. Tyler Davis is strictly kept for special teams. They didn't keep him at all because he can play tight end. They kept Tyler Davis for one reason only, and that is that Tyler Davis can play special teams. Because what he showed on the field of play as a tight end does not warrant a roster spot. They kept 25 guys on offense, 25 guys on defense, and the three special teamers. Defensively, on the defensive line, you got six with Kenny Clark, Dean Lowry, Jaron Reed, TJ Slayton, Devontae Wyatt, and Jonathan Ford. Jaron Reed and Kenny Clark are probably going to get the most reps out of all 6 of those guys. But you have Wyatt, who's still learning and developing the NFL game. Defensive line takes some time. TJ Slayton, you're hoping you're going to get a second-round jump out of. Dean Lowry is showed last year that he can play defensive line again after having a rough go at it 2 years ago. And Jonathan Ford is just a monster. Not surprised they kept him. I know there's some work to be done with him, but he's just a monster. Inside linebacker, Devondre Campbell, Quay Walker, Chris Barnes, and Isaiah McDuffie. I'm very impressed with this inside linebacking group for Green Bay. All 4 of those guys. McDuffie, rookie last year, took a step up in training camp and OTAs and all that this year, showing that he deserves to be on the field. Obviously, he's going to be mostly a special teams guy at this point, but he's showing he deserves a roster spot based off his play. Chris Barnes, starter the last 2 years, had some injury issues and didn't quite have the speed that Campbell and Walker have. Great number 3rd option, a middle linebacker, and he's going to be another special teams guy. They got guys they can funnel in and out at the middle linebacker spot that they're not really going to lose a lot. And when's the last time you could say that about the Packers' middle linebacker spot? Under Ted, they downgraded value at middle linebacker. This year they took a middle linebacker in the first round, and he has looked every part of the first round pick in Walker. Outside linebacker, Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary. Obviously no surprises there. Jonathan Garvin, Tipa Galilea, and Kingsley Engelbear. I'm surprised they didn't keep Kobe Jones, a linebacker that did quite well in spurts in training camp. But I'm also surprised I haven't seen him pop up on the practice squad yet. But I think Engelbear is somebody that could contribute initially coming off the bench, spelling Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary. And that 3rd and 4th and 5th edge rusher position is extremely important because Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary play roughly 60% of the time. You're going to need that other 30% somebody playing in there. Corner, no surprise. Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, Rasul Douglas, Keeson Nixon, who's a big special teamer, and Shamir Jean Charles, who played extremely well this preseason at corner, and he's also a special teams guy. And safety, Adrian Amos, Darnell Savage, Dallin Levitt, Tyreek Carpenter, and initially Micah Abernathy made the roster, but they made a roster change where they brought in Rudy Ford and released Abernathy to get Rudy Ford on the roster. And he's another guy that's special teams. He's a 6-year player out of Auburn, 6 foot 200, played with Arizona, 2 years after 2 years with the Cardinals, played with Philly, then to Jacksonville. And he's a guy that has played a lot on special teams, and he's a special teams contributor. And the Packers are going to likely use him a lot on kickoff and coverage and punt and whatnot. And then special teams, no surprise, Mason Crosby, Pat O'Donnell, and Jack Coco. Crosby didn't practice at all in training camp due to dealing with a knee issue, but he passed his physical. He's on the 53. They did put the kicker on the practice squad, so for some reason Crosby's not ready to kick week 1, they can elevate the kicker and have him do the kicking stuff. So 53-man roster, not a ton of surprises aside from only 2 running backs. They kept an extra receiver, so they're comfortable with Amari Rodgers kind of serving as that number 3 guy and utilizing the practice squad rules is my guess is what they're going to do, and keeping the 10 offensive linemen. I'm not surprised they kept Tyler Davis. I don't think Tyler Davis had a good training camp at all. I think Tyler Davis was out of position a lot. It's because of him. Jordan Love had one of his interceptions, bounced right off his hands into the hands of a defender, and they had a big return. If it wasn't for special teams, I'm sure Tyler Davis doesn't make the team. And we'll see if Robert Tonyan is ready to go week 1. I'm not holding my breath, but we'll see if he is. And then practice squad, the Packers. So anytime you release somebody, anytime you release somebody off to get down to your 53, you're taking the risk that somebody's going to pick them up, claim them off waivers, and you're not going to get them back onto your practice squad. In reality, that does not happen very often. I can think of one guy who the Packers released that they wanted back on their practice squad who didn't, and that was former quarterback who's now in New Orleans and Taysom Hill. So I made the comment that anyone the Packers want back on their practice squad will be back on the practice squad after 53, after the cutdown, because nobody on the Packers who they release is going to sign with anybody else. Well, they're not going to be claimed off waivers, I guess I should say. Nobody's going to put in a claim on any of the people that the Packers released because they're fringe 53-man roster people. That's who they are. And that's what the Packers say. They had to release guys to get to 53 and keep the best 53. And the other guys, most of them, they're able to get on their practice squad. And I'm not surprised. Danny Etling, there is no way he was going to make the 53-man roster. Jordan Love is that backup quarterback. There's no if and buts about it. And I think Jordan Love, as shown in this preseason, he's a fine number 2 quarterback right now. Will he eventually develop into a number 1? Time will tell. But Jordan Love's a great number 2 quarterback right now, and he's going to put the work in to be ready to have to play on Sunday if he has to. But basically, he's going to spend the majority of the time holding the clipboard, running the scout team, making sure the defense is ready week in, week out, and hopefully turns out to be a Super Bowl championship team in the Green Bay Packers. Danny Etling, good insurance policy on the practice squad. He's a good teammate. He works hard, and you know what you have him. You had him last year on the practice squad for a chunk of time, and now you have him this year. So Etling is not an NFL starting quarterback. He is a practice squad quarterback, just like Kurt Benkert last year, which I like Kurt Benkert as a person. I think he seems to be an outstanding person. Exactly what you're looking for in a teammate, but he's not an NFL starting quarterback or even an NFL number 2 quarterback, and that's what Danny Etling is. So, but I'm not surprised at all that nobody put a claim in for him, just like I wasn't surprised at all last year when the Packers exposed Kurt Benkert to the waiver wire, and he got unclaimed and he signed with Green Bay. Jack Heffen is on the practice squad. He did what he could to earn a 53-man roster spot, but the Packers decided they wanted to go in a different direction and brought him back for the practice squad. He's another guy who plays hard, works hard, undrafted guy a couple years ago, and he's a guy that he's a nice teammate to have out there. Do I want him starting every game? No, but he's a teammate that I want out there. Rico Gafford makes the practice squad. Very fast, can run really hard, and the Packers probably feel that he's a guy that can potentially become a defender on this team, but they don't feel he's ready to be on the 53 right now. Patrick Taylor and Tyler Goodson, both on the practice squad. I know it was tough letting Goodson go, but Goodson did not play special teams really well, struggled a little bit in camp, needs to work on his pass pro a little bit, and that's stuff he can do on the practice squad, and maybe he can get caught up on Sundays or whatever to be that on the game day roster to be that third running back. But he's got some work to do around the edges to become an NFL back. And Patrick Taylor, he's perfect number 3 back or practice squad guy. Chris Slayton, he's a guy they got from the Giants, I want to say last year. But busted. He was extremely impressive as a pass rusher. did everything possible to try to make a big push to make that final roster. But when you're the Packers and you play more of a base 3-4 defense, and you mostly play two down linemen, to be perfectly honest, a lot of the time, you don't need a ton of defensive linemen. But now with Chris Slayton and Heflin on the practice squad, outside of your 5 you kept on your 53 man, you got two solid pieces on your practice squad there. Keandre Thomas had a good preseason. We allowed only 1 reception on 7 targets, a good tackler. He's a guy that could just, again, use some work. He's a guy you can bring up to the game day roster for some special teams work. Ramiz Ahmed, kicker who did really well when Crosby has been out, but you don't need him on the 53 when you got Crosby. A name a lot of us are familiar with due to Packers releasing him in 2020 and him having a good stretch. Oh, excuse me. Him having a good stretch run in Philadelphia in 2020, and Travis Fulgham. He hasn't really done much since, but again, he had some depth to that wide receiver room via the practice squad. Ladarius Hamilton worked a lot as the 2 unit, and he's a guy that saw some regular snaps in 2021, and he's a guy that could be caught up off the practice squad first person down. And then Benji Franklin is not made it to the practice squad, and they did sign Kobe Jones. I didn't see his name anywhere for a minute, but they did in fact sign him in the practice squad. And Ray Wilborn and Caleb Jones, Juwan Winfrey, all added to the practice squad, and myself included was a little surprised when they didn't keep Winfrey on the 53-man roster when Rodgers talked about him numerous times about liking him. He's always in the right spot at the right time. Rodgers trusts him. He's got a lot of trust in Winfrey, so I was a little surprised when they didn't keep him on the 53, but overall, he's not a 53-man roster guy. He is what he is. He's maxed out. He's reached his ceiling, and that's just the way it is. So that is my thought on the Packers' initial 53-man roster, and of course, a lot of that can change moving forward, as we saw with Rudy Ford being added after they set the initial 53-man, and they could still make some changes between now and the week from Sunday when they open up their 2022 season. There's still changes they can make. So something just to kind of keep an eye out on, that they could still potentially make changes to this 53-man roster. And finally, before I do go, next week I'm going to have a 2022 season preview where I give my predictions on the division winners and awards and who I think is going to make the playoffs and potentially win the Super Bowl. That'll be next week's show. I'm also going to talk a lot about the Packers defense and if in fact they can be one of the top defenses in the NFL this year. Finally, Milwaukee Brewers. Milwaukee Brewers, starting September 1st, opening a 4-game series against the Arizona Diamondbacks in Arizona. The Brewers have taken their last 2 series, taken 2-3 against the Cubs, 2-3 against Pittsburgh, and you need to have at least a split. Worst case scenario, best case scenario, you take 3-4 against Arizona, and you go to Colorado on Monday, taking that series from Arizona. The division is not out of reach yet for Milwaukee. Yes, St. Louis is playing great baseball, but eventually St. Louis they have to slow down a little bit. They're not going to be on this pace the entire month of September. And the Brewers need to win series. They need to take series, sweep some series, and finish the month of September strong. And that's exactly what they did in 2018 to make the playoffs. They dominated September. They have a better pitching rotation this year than they did in September. In September, you had rookies in Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodworth and Freddie Peralta, and you had guys Tasheen and others leading that rotation that really probably outperformed what you were expecting out of those guys. But they got better starting pitching now than they did in 2018. And you got guys getting hot. And that's important. You got guys getting hot at the right time. Yelich is starting to turn it around quite a bit. He's hitting at a high pace. Hunter Renfro's been hot. Colton Wong, Keston Hira, and Garrett Mitchell's created a bit of a spark in the bottom of the order for the Brewers, calling him up when Davis got put on the IL. I think the Brewers have time to take the division. Will they? Probably not. I'm not ready to concede the division, but at the same time, they still have a shot at the division. They're not out of the division race. They're 6 games back. They're not out of the division race until the season reaches its conclusion or they're mathematically eliminated. And like I said, I don't see the Cardinals continuing at this ridiculous clip that they've been at. The Brewers can gain a half ground today with a win as the Cardinals are off. And then hopefully the Cubs can beat the Cardinals a couple times. And the Cardinals got the Nationals and back in St. Louis. Then they got the Pirates, and then the Brewers have 2 games against the Cardinals, head-to-head matchup. Then the Padres are fighting for their playoff lives. They have the Padres and the Cardinals coming up later on this month. They got the Dodgers left later on this month, and then they got the Brewers again, 2 more in Milwaukee, and they close the season in Pittsburgh. So the division the Brewers can't still take. Are they going to? Probably not. Wild card is probably more realistic as they're 2.5 behind the Padres. And it's do or die time for Milwaukee. I think this is a playoff caliber team. They're talented. They've had a lot of guys underachieving this year. Luis Urias, a big part of that, who's been underachieving. The hope is he can get hot as other guys have. But I'm not ready to be done with the Brewers quite yet. I think they can still win that division, and I think they can definitely still take a wild card. They have too much talent to not. They can get hot, and basically they have to hope that the Cardinals and the Padres and or the Phillies kind of cool off a little bit and take advantage. And that's what they did in 2018. They were in second or third place at this point in 2018. And we're not going to have a game 163 this year, but the Brewers fought all the way to force a game 163 and beat the Cubs in game 163 to win the division. And the Cubs ended up losing to Colorado in the wild card game, and the Brewers ended up beating Colorado in the first round. So is it likely? No. Is it doable? Yes. And I think it can still happen. So with that said, it's a little shorter version than usual for Talking Sports with Evan. Thank you all for watching, for streaming, for viewing, for listening. However you tune in to Talking Sports with Evan, I appreciate it. And I will get back at you next week as I preview the 2022 NFL season. Hope you all have a great rest of your evening and a great weekend.